Salutations, fallen angels, and brothers and sisters within the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion, as well as the territory we call the Kingdom of Ireland. Today, we're going to be watching a video that's going to be telling you in regards to who are the Black Irish. And this is going to pretty much be coinciding with the videos I've been talking about in regards to the Irish Jamaica or the Black Irish in Jamaica. And this is going to pretty much, hopefully, sum up some of the information that many of you brothers and sisters who have been on this path of remembering via your genealogy in regards to your own family ancestry. So once again, if this is the first time you visit this channel, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to it. Other than that, hit that notification bell so therefore you yourself will be notified whenever I go live or I go ahead and upload a new video for you yourself can be able to view. And with that being said, just go ahead and get into the video.
The term Black Irish has sparked curiosity, confusion, and controversy.
And before I actually go further within the video, I would like to go ahead and give a shout out to the creator of Black Journal. They always want to give the content creators their recognition for doing a marvelous job on the content that they do. Also, I'm going to leave their information down in the description of the video so you can go ahead and follow them and see some of the content that they have been creating. Let's go ahead and get started. Also, this is for educational purpose or for fair use.
Who were these people? Where did they come from? And what is the truth behind their mysterious features? The dark hair, olive skin, and deep-set eyes that set them apart from the stereotypical pale-skinned, red-haired image of Ireland? Some say they were descendants of Spanish shipwreck survivors from the Armada. Others trace their roots to African or Iberian ancestry. But beneath the myths and romanticized folklore lies a far more complex and often uncomfortable history, one that reveals a hidden chapter of migration, colonialism, and identity. In today's episode, we will be digging deep into the genetic.
All right, and once again, I'm going to have to be pausing and periodically, so therefore I don't get hit with any type of copyright strikes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pay attention to that part. And I'm going to also try to do a little commentary to explain some of the information that you yourself may not understand that may have been sent. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we go ahead and give you the proper clarity that you may need.
Historical and cultural evidence to uncover the dark secret behind the Black Irish DNA. In the same vein, we will be exploring what it really says about the origin of the so-called Black Irish people. While we are at it, we would like you to support our works by hitting the thumbs up button in front of you. Share this video with as many as you can across the globe. And if you are yet to, subscribe to stay tuned in to our channel for more revealing contents which centers all around Black experience and truth. Now let us delve right in. There have been quite a number of different claims as to the origin of the term Black Irish, none of which are possible to entirely prove or disprove. The term Black Irish has been in circulation among Irish immigrants and their descendants for centuries. Yet, as a subject of historical discussion, it is almost never referred to in Ireland.
Exactly.
The term is commonly used to describe people of Irish origin who have dark features, black hair, a dark complexion, or dark eyes. A quick review of Irish history reveals that the island was subject to a number of influxes of foreign cultures. The Celts arrived on the island about the year 500 BC. As described by the ancient Romans, they were tall and fair and warlike, and noted that there were many redheads. Although most of them were dark-haired, there were some red-haired Celts. The idea was greatly strengthened by the fact that the Celts used lime to style and dye their hair before battles. This bleached their hair and gave it a reddish appearance. The Celts were also known to be quite taller than the Romans. From old records, it is estimated that the average Roman soldier was only about 5 feet 5 inches, which was about 1.65 meters, and most estimates put the ancient Celts at 5 feet 6 inches or 5 feet 7 inches, which is around 1.7 to 1.75 meters. Some historians believe that the Celts applied various substances to their hair before going into battle, causing it to stand upright and make them appear taller and more intimidating. This practice has led to speculation that their hair may have originally been dark and that they possibly dyed it before battle to enhance their appearance or for symbolic reasons. In the Bog Bodies exhibition in the National Museum of Ireland in Dublin, the styled red hair on Clonaicavan Man, an Irish Celt who died over 2,000 years ago, is still obvious. Many people question whether the Celts ever truly invaded the island of Ireland. While some argue it was a full-scale invasion, others believe it was more likely a gradual migration, followed by the assimilation of Celtic culture by the native Irish. Though the debate continues, available evidence strongly supports the idea that Celtic influence spread through cultural integration rather than direct conquest. The next great influx came from Northern Europe, with Viking raids occurring as early as 790.
All right. Oh, and like he was saying in regards that they don't believe that the Celts actually invaded Ireland, but it was actually a migration. And as time went on, the people just pretty much adopted the culture of those who are now the new inhabitants of their home. It's similar to what goes on or what's taking place here in the West, how a lot of new nations, people come over here and we start taking on some of their mannerisms, some of their traditions and things of that nature, which start mold the identity that we call American over here. So as we can see, history may have been, altered in the case of how they explained how different migration patterns or how new people have come amongst land, that it may not have been a so-called a war in this case or an invasion. All right, let's go ahead and let's continue with the video.
5 AD. The defeat of the Vikings at the Battle of Clontarf in the year 1014 by Brian Boru marked the end of the struggle with the invaders and saw the subsequent integration of the Vikings into Irish society. The migrants became Gaelicized and formed septs, a kind of clan, along Gaelic lines. A popular theory about the Viking influence on the Irish look is that the Irish were dark-haired, dark-eyed people before the Viking sea invaders began to attack Ireland in the 9th century from Scandinavia. Over time, the Irish mixed with a lot of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Vikings to get the modern Irish look. This theory is both true and untrue. It was definitely not the case that the Viking blonde hair mixed with the Celtic dark hair to produce red hair. Both races, in fact, carried the red hair gene. However, the Vikings did bring a lot of traits of fair hair, light-colored skin, and light-colored eyes, which became part of the Irish genetic mix. The Norman invasions of 1170 and 1172, led by Strongbow, saw yet another wave of immigrants settle in the country, many of whom fiercely resisted English dominance of the island in the centuries that followed. The plantation of Ulster in the 17th century saw the arrival of English and Scottish colonists in Ulster after the flight of the Earls. Each of these immigrant groups had their own physical characteristics, and all, with the exception of the Ulster planters, assimilated to some degree into Irish society, many claiming to be more Irish than the Irish themselves. The Vikings were often referred to as the dark invaders or black foreigners. The Gaelic word for foreigner is Gaul, and for black or dark is Dub. Many of the invading families who settled in Ireland adopted Gaelic surnames that reflected both their origins and their roles. For instance, the surname Doyle comes from the Irish word O'Dub Gael, meaning dark foreigner, a name that hints at their heritage as outsiders, possibly with dark intentions or appearances. Similarly, the name Gallagher is derived from O'Galchopair, meaning foreign help.
And I'm going to stop it here, or I'm going to pause it here for a second. It says from the Irish Central. And remember, I did a video talking about the Irish Central when they had spoken in regards to the Irish servants who were runaways, and their masters were pretty much putting out an advertisement to get them back, and they described the complexion of one of them as being brown, and the other Irish servant, who was named Thomas Collard, as being dark complexion. Now we're reading here once again from Irish Central. It says the Vikings were often referred to as the dark invaders or black foreigners The Gaelic word for foreigner is Gaul, and for black or dark is Dub. Many of the invaders' families took Gaelic names that utilized these two descriptive words. The name Doyle is in Irish O'Dogal, which you just said, which literally means dark foreigner, which reveals the heritage of invading force with dark intentions. And the name Gallagher or Gallagher, which translates foreign help. The traditional image of Vikings is appeal, but this is modern, with pale skin, blonde hair invaders. But their description as dark foreigners may need to conclude that their he's saying memory and folklore does not necessarily reflect the physical description. That's the issue, because when we hear the term black or when they say the term dark, many people want to go with a different connotation instead of exactly what the word meant. And we already looked at the research in regard to the word dub, because duff goes back to dub, and it also ties back to what? Dark complexion.
Further emphasizing the perception of these groups as external forces in Irish history. While the traditional image of Viking invaders often evokes pale-skinned, blonde-haired warriors, these Gaelic descriptors, like dark foreigners, suggest that folklore may not have preserved an accurate physical description. In fact, Ireland today is home to a wide range of physical traits. Those with blonde or red hair and light skin may indeed trace their ancestry back to Viking settlers, but not all invaders fit that stereotype. The diversity in Ireland's genetic and cultural heritage reflects a much more complex historical tapestry than often acknowledged. The Normans are also another set of people that should be considered when talking about Black ancestry in Ireland. This group of persons were invited into Ireland by Dermot McMurrough and were led by the famous Strongbow. They all originated in France, where black-haired people are not uncommon. As with the Vikings, these persons were viewed as people with dark intentions, who ultimately colonized much of the eastern part of the country and several larger towns. Many families, however, integrated into Gaelic society and changed their Norman name to Gaelic and then Anglo equivalents, the Powers, the Fitzpatricks, Fitzgeralds, Devereux, Redmonds. It is possible that the term Black Irish may have referred to some of these immigrant groups as a way of distinguishing them from the Gaels, the people of ultimately Celtic origin. Another popular theory about the origin of the Black Irish is that they are descendants of Spanish sailors who were shipwrecked off the west coast of Ireland after the disastrous defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. Some accounts also suggest that.
All right, so we're going to try to go back and see what it just said, because I know many of you say where it says Swarthy, so you need to know or understand what Swarthy meant. All right, so it says ancient orders of Hibernians, Irish Catholic American. The term Black Irish is often used to describe people of Irish descent who have dark features, black hair, dark eyes, and a swarthy complexion. Swarthy, we know, means brown. However, the origins of the term and the exact characteristics associated with it are somewhat shrouded in mystery. One theory is that the Black Irish are descendants of the Spanish Armada, which was shipwrecked off the Irish coast in 1588. Many of the sailors were said to have swarthy complexions, which we know mean brown, and dark hair, and some may have intermarried with the Irish population. This seems unlikely since ship survivors who reached land were nearly all killed by local inhabitants when they reached shore or were captured and executed by the English. A few of the wealthy survivors were ransomed by Spain and returned home safely. Pause. Now, if these individuals all were swarthy and the Irish was also swarthy, well, clearly they could have mixed up with with each other in regards to blending in, so that way they can, pass, so to speak, the suspecting eyes that's going to be trying to find these so-called prisoners or sailors or POWs, however you want to explain it. It's no different than when you have different melanated people from other nations who come over here to America who literally look just like you and I, but clearly you will be able to tell who they are based off of, certain little small things that you have to have the proper eye to understand when it comes down to it. But other than that, you, from the unaided eye, you wouldn't know. So it makes perfect sense as well with how that could have been the case. But let's continue. Just trying to go ahead and catch itself up with the audio.
Disastrous defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. Some accounts also suggest that Spanish traders who had settled in Ireland contributed to this ancestry, giving rise to a distinct group marked by dark hair, olive skin, and other Mediterranean features. And this theory seems quite untrue, as most of the Spanish Armada survivors who reached the Irish captured and executed by English forces or later ransomed.
I apologize for the inconvenience,
Back
but
to Spain if they
it's
were
gonna hopefully
wealthy
help
enough.
us when it comes down to
Very few remained in
passing the copyright strike.
Ireland, making it doubtful that they left a significant genetic legacy, although there were Irish clans protecting survivors like the O'Rourke of Bryfni, Cavan, McClancy of Rosclogher, Leitrim, and Redmond O'Gallagher of Derry, who, at the behest of the three Hughes of Ulster, O'Neill, that they left a significant genetic legacy, although there were Irish clans protecting survivors like the O'Rourke of Bryfni, Cavan, McClancy of Rosclogher, Leitrim, and Redmond O'Gallagher of Derry.
I might just have to let it play through.
At the behest of the three Hughes of Ulster, O'Neill, O'Donnell, and Maguire, safely smuggled survivors back to Spain. Virtually none of them survived to settle down and wed Irish women, since those few who escaped detection were more anxious to get out of the enemy's territory and arrive back home to their family in Spain. The Irish clans hoped that Spain would reciprocate for this goodwill gesture and send troops to Ireland to help the clans overthrow English rule. Unfortunately, Spain did not. It is really striking,
it didn't happen.
how this tale is very similar to the ancient Irish legend of the Milesians, who settled in Ireland having traveled from Spain. In the United States, the term Black Irish was initially used in the 19th century to derogatorily describe Irish refugees of the Great Famine. It later shifted into a term used to describe people of Irish descent who have black or dark-colored hair, blue or dark eyes, or otherwise dark coloring. This meaning is not commonly used in Ireland, where Black Irish more refers to Irish people of African descent. The most common use of the term Black Irish is tied to the myth that they were descended from Spanish sailors shipwrecked during the Spanish Armada of 1588. However, no anthropological, historical, or genetic research supports this story. Some theorists assert that the term was adopted in some cases by Irish Americans who wanted to conceal interracial unions with African Americans, paralleling the phrase Black Dutch, which was also used in the United States to hide racial identity. Likewise, the concept of Black Irish was also used by some Aboriginal Australians to racially pass themselves into Australian society. In the earlier parts of the 19th century, Black Irish was sometimes used in the United States to describe biracial people of African and Irish descent. For many others, they believe the theory that the Black Irish are descendants of any small foreign group that integrated with the Irish and survived is unlikely. And for them, it seems more likely that Black Irish is a descriptive term rather than an inherited characteristic that has been applied to various categories of Irish people over the centuries. One such example is that of the hundreds of thousands of Irish peasants who emigrated to America after the Great Famine of 1845 to 1849. The year 1847 was known as Black 47. The potato blight, which destroyed the main source of sustenance, turned the vital food black. It is possible that the arrival of large numbers of Irish after the famine into America, Canada, Australia, and beyond resulted in them being labeled as black, in that they escaped from this new kind of Black Death. Immigrant groups throughout history have generally been treated poorly by the indigenous population or by those who simply settled first. Derogatory names for immigrant groups are legion, and in the case of those who left Ireland include Shanty Irish and almost certainly Black Irish. It is also possible that within the various Irish cultures that became established in America, that there was a pecking order, a class system that saw some of their countrymen labeled as black. The term Black Irish has also been applied to the descendants of Irish immigrants who settled in the West Indies. It was also used in Ireland.
Now, remember, especially it's based off of those who watched the video or the live that we did, whence the Black Irish in Jamaica. Pay attention to what that book said. Pay attention to the other various books, and then also too listen to the commentary. So as you're going to see it, there has been a lot of distortion taking place within history because there's a lot of people, especially even myself, who have Irish surnames who actually fit the description based off of what historical traditional text has said and not the modern text that we see nowadays, which seems to show things a little bit more, different than what historically they were saying. But let's go ahead and continue.
Catholics in Ulster Province as a derogatory term to describe the Protestant planters. While the term at various stages was almost certainly used as an insult, the term Black Irish has emerged in recent times as a virtual badge of honor among some descendants of immigrants. It is unlikely that the exact origin of the term will ever be known, and it is also likely that it has had a number of different iterations, depending on the historical context.
Exactly.
It remains, therefore, a descriptive term used for many purposes, rather than a reference to an actual class of people who may have survived the centuries. By the 20th century, Black Irish had become an identity played out by Irish American authors such as F. Scott Fitzgerald and Robert E. Howard. In 21st century Ireland, Black Irish is used primarily to refer to Irish nationals of African descent, and the alternative meaning is not commonly used. In a recent discovery, Martine Brennan writes about her digital public history project, Enslavement to Citizenship, African Americans in Irish Slaveholder Records, 1670 to 1862, and the insights into the diversities of Irish diaspora history gained by DNA testing. For Edwina Harleston Whitlock, born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1916, there is no doubt about her Irish ancestry. She can trace her lineage through William Harleston, who was born in 1804 and died in 1874, back to his great-grandfather, John Harleston of Dublin, who arrived in Charleston about 1698. This oral and documented...
Look. This is crazy. This is what I'm telling you, brothers and sisters. Based off of the law, they dealt with who you were via genealogy. It wasn't about so-called skin complexion. And we know that we just got to accept it for the sake of the video, for the content creator, once again, give shout out to the content creator. But those of you who've been doing your research and understand how science works when it comes down to genetics, know that there's no way in the world that someone of a lighter hue will produce someone of my magnitude. It just does not work that way. But just go ahead and keep listening to the video. This is why we saying now is the time for you to start utilizing proper discernment and start doing your proper thorough research. Go back to how they spoke in regards to these people from an anthropological standpoint as well as science, because in America they don't utilize those specific categories of science to pretty much determine race here in America. All right, now I already done a video talking about that, so let's continue.
History was passed down in her family from generation to generation. Mrs. Harleston Whitlock is only one of an estimated 38% of African Americans who have Irish ancestry. William Harleston, though never legally married, had a large family of 8 children, with Kate Wilson from 18.
And we know the videos of the pictures are AI created, but it's just hilarious.
He made provision for Kate Wilson in his will, and his descendants went on to become significant members of the African American community and owners of the Harleston Funeral Home in Charleston. However, Edward Ball, a European American, descended from Elizabeth Harleston Ball, John Harleston's sister, did not learn of his African American cousins until he began the research, which resulted in his groundbreaking book, Slaves in the Family. The book documents his family's 167 years as slaveholders, during which they enslaved almost 4,000 African Americans at the time. Ball's lack of knowledge of his African American cousins is replicated time and again in the family histories of Irish and other European American families. In 1938, John Clowney Brown of Fairfield County, South Carolina, noted that his mother was an unnamed European woman and his wife, Adeline Cabean, was the daughter of John Cabean, an Irish overseer on the Clowney plantation, and an enslaved woman named Charity. Yet for many European people, their first knowledge of shared ancestry with African people comes when they undertake DNA testing. As DNA testing becomes more common, their shared Irish and African American history is coming into focus. Genetic science has much to teach historians. Given the history of the ownership of enslaved people, it comes as no surprise that, on average, people who identify as African American have been found to have a genetic makeup of 73% African genetic ancestry and 24% European genetic ancestry. However, the fact that 4% of US citizens who identify themselves as white have 1% or more African genetic ancestry, and this may surprise many. This indicates an African ancestor within the last 200 years. In South Carolina, the percentage of people who are identified as white but have African ancestry has.
And also, for those of you who know, in 1740, South Carolina passed what they call the South Carolina Negro Act. In Section 4, they explicitly had stated that those who they called Negroes are actually the descendants of the ancient Berbers. So they start changing the words and the terminology and who you were to start removing your identity. And if you've done the research as well via the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, it will tell you that those Berbers were actually also known as the ancient Irish, going to the ancient same stock based off of the ancient megalithic monuments that they were able to find through not only North Africa, but also in so-called the British Isles and also here in the territories that you call the Americas. Let's continue.
Surprisingly risen to about 13%. Irish involvement in the ownership and enslavement of human beings can be traced back to the foundation of the British Carolina colony in 1670. Afra Harleston Cumming of Dublin, John and Elizabeth Harleston's aunt, was on the first ship into the Carolina colony. Among her fellow passengers was Florence O'Sullivan of Kinsale, Ireland, and Joseph Dalton of Dublin. These early Irish settlers and their European peers established the legal and economic framework of the Carolina colony. Many of them were heavily influenced by time spent in the Caribbean as planters and owners of enslaved people. They were followed by
and there was also
Irish
melanated people who were slave owners too.
of Cork,
So
Ireland elected governor of the Carolina colony.
that's the truth you have to accept.
1684, Michael Mahon of Limerick, the owner of Limerick Plantation, and Thomas Aiken, who owned Irishtown. Under their watch, the African population of the Carolina colony grew from 1,500 in 1690 to 4,100 in 1710. These early Irish settlers created a cushion of wealth for their legal descendants based on the labor, purchase, and sale of enslaved people. Their presence and that of their African American descendants contradicts the white Irish famine immigrant narrative with which we are all familiar. In the words of Tanya Evans, the discovery of manifold secrets and lies throws into question not only the history of a family and class relationships, but also the history of the nation and empire. This largely unexplored aspect of the history of the Irish diaspora needs to be addressed if we are to come to a more complete and representative understanding of the Irish's past. To this end, the Digital Public History Project, Enslavement to Citizenship, African Americans in Irish Slaveholder Records, 1670 to 1862, was launched in 22. Its primary goal is to create a census substitute for African Americans enslaved by Irish men and women who are unnamed in federal census records prior to 1870. The focus is predominantly on property records, wills, estate inventories, dowry records, and bills of sale, which African American scholars have been using for decades to identify enslaved ancestors. However, in order to do that, they have to create a database of Irish slaveholders first. Through this approach, over 200 Irish-born slaveholders have been identified in South Carolina alone. Pinpointing their exact places of birth in Ireland remains difficult, and tracing the documented histories of individual enslaved families is even more challenging. The project actively welcomes contributions from scholars and researchers already studying specific Irish slaveholding families in the U.S. It owes special thanks to Margaret Seidler of Charleston, Stephen Harper of Pennsylvania, Stacey Ashmore Cole of Georgia, and Cindy Hines of Oregon for their invaluable work. Committed to democratizing access to history, the project aims to make records previously locked behind paywalls freely available to African American families and their European descendants. The research reveals the complex relationships between men and women of the Irish diaspora who were slaveholders and their Irish American and African American descendants. It also highlights how much of this information is common knowledge in many African American families, but is unknown to Irish and Irish American families. Edwina Harleston Whitlock was always aware of her Irish ancestry, but it was a revelation to Edward Ball that he had African American cousins. Adeline Cabean Brown was also aware of her Irish ancestry, but it is doubtful that her Irish grandparents ever knew of her existence. In closing, the story of the Black Irish is more than just a genetic mystery. It is a powerful reflection of how history, migration, slavery, and cultural identity intersect. From Irish slaveholders in the American South to the forgotten bloodlines buried under centuries of silence, the truth is slowly coming to light. It is challenging what we thought we knew about ancestry, race, and the legacy of the empire. So as we continue to uncover these dark and complex truths, let us not forget that history is not just about the past, it shapes who we are today. And that brings us to the end of yet another video segment. Don't forget to support our works by hitting.
Okay. And once again, a shout out to the brother at Black Journal for doing this great content in regards to who are the Black Irish and DNA. But now, once again, we know here at this channel that we deal with this from the standpoint of genealogy, from what the ancients dealt with. And for you to deal with a genealogical standpoint, you need to have your family records. In this case, you can utilize your birth certificate that you were born with, because that is a legal document, and trace your family records all the way back by utilizing the legal census records you see within the local jurisdiction of your families. And as we all know, many of our families have moved throughout the decades to various different territories. So part of that's going to require you to actually start you're going to have to actually start finding records from these different territories, because if you don't do it from those different territories in regards to your family, where they came from, then you will always find yourself in a hole. And I like to always use, once again, our favorite website, which is what? House of Names, because House of Names does a pretty good job in regarding being able to help us see what clearly they don't talk much about. And if we look at it from the standpoint from they did, because they utilized the historical records, they utilized the documents that was there in the public realm and not from someone else's interpretation. So one word I want to use as so that we know for sure where it comes from, who the people were speaking in regards to. What did they say? When you look up the word dub, from how they used it, you saw, excuse me, dub, D-U-B-H. All right. It didn't pop up on there, but Duff does. And then also too, we're going to look up, let's see, Duff says it. You know what? Let's make it easier for us. Let's go to the word that we always hear, daddy. Here you go, daddy. History, family crest, and coats of arms. And origin it comes from is Ireland. So it says, what did the name daddy mean? The original Gaelic form of daddy was O'Dubda. So you see, I was right. I was trying to spell it, but I couldn't find it. The first portion of the name comes from the word dub, which means black or dark complexion. So as you can see how in the video, you have to read between the lines of how they're explaining, because if the word daddy goes back to Gaelic, and it's telling you that the people who are called daddy, it was somebody who was pretty much who you would call a black man today, black or dark complexion. So let's go ahead and look, and read. It says that early origins of the daddy family. The surname daddy was first found in County Mayo, located on the west coast of the Republic of Ireland in the province of Connacht. King Neil, brother of Fiachra and descended from Daithi, was one of the last pagan kings of Ireland. For centuries, they were the leading sept of northern youth Fiachra. Hopefully I said that right. Their territory comprised the baronies of Eris and Tiroli in the county of Mayo and Tirac and Sligo. They were the traditional princes of High Fiachra and Connacht. And it says, oh, Hart. And we know that Hart, that's also my family's side, coming from my grandfather. So my mother's father is a Hart, which technically I should have been a Hart by name, but I inherited the steel too. So in this case, that's who I am, as well as a Hart, or old Hart. And then it says migration of the daddy family. 19th century saw a great wave of Irish families leaving Ireland and the distant shores of North America and Australia. These families often left their homeland hungry, penniless, and destitute due to the policies of England. Those Irish immigrants that survived the long sea passage initially settled on the eastern seaboard of the continent, so on the east coast of America. Some, however, moved north to a then infant Canada as United Empire loyalists after ironically serving with the English in the American War of Independence. Others that remained in America later joined the westward migration in search of land. The greatest influx of Irish immigrants, though, came to North America during the Great Potato Famine of the late 1840s. Thousands left Ireland at this time for North America, and those who arrived were immediately put to work building railroads, coal mines, bridges, and canals. In fact, the foundations of today's powerful nations of the United States and Canada were to a larger degree built by the Irish. Archival documents indicate that the members of the Daddy family relocated to North American shores quite early. The Dowd family, who arrived in Virginia as early as 1656, Thomas Dowd began the family trek. Most of the family, however, landed following the potato famine and settled in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts in the late 19th century. All right, so it said, remember, it told us the original daddy, this is how they should look. So prior to the so-called Great Potato Famine, those who were already here, who were Irish, will fit this description. And we know based off of their surnames. So genealogy, once again, brothers and sisters, was going to help clear up a lot of that misconception that you have pretty much been having in regards to your surname, which is your free name. The etymology of surname means free name. And from the various videos that we have been doing based off of anecdotal evidence from historical accounts, as well from what we have shown from a genealogy DNA perspective, that you and those of you who have these surnames are actually tied to these people. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, stay tuned to the next video. Peace.